So let us start with the first topic of polity and governance. This is reform in the 7th schedule. Okay, that is page number 4 of your magazine. Is everyone on page number 4? Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so schedules of the constitution, really very important. Different kinds of questions have been asked, different schedules have been asked. Here we are talking specifically about the 7th schedule, right? So as your topic starts, on the right hand you will see this image wherein evolution of this schedule has been given. Okay, evolution of this schedule has been given. Evolution is really important. All of these years you need to know, and what happened, what is the significance of each of these years is important, can always be asked. For example, everything started with 1861. You need to remember this name of law. Okay, that is the Indian Councils Act of 1861. What is the significance? It provided for provincial legislative councils which had substantial Indian representation. Okay, which had Indian representation. So the kind of question that can be asked here is, this particular law provided for provincial legislative councils, but these councils did not have any Indian representation. Okay, true or false? Like, is this a correct or an incorrect statement? These kind of questions can be framed. Then you have the other years. Similarly, you need to look at information from the other years. In 1882, what did Ripon do? Ripon's resolution, what was it about? Then 1909 Government of India Act, what is its significance? 1919 Act, what is the significance? And finally 1935 Act, right? So all this entire timeline should be clear in your mind. You don't need to go into too much details, but whatever details are given here, that is appropriate. Just the name of the law, the year, and its significance, what it contributed. That's it. Okay. Come to the left hand side of this image, that is evolution of 7th schedule. The left hand side talks about 7th schedule of the Constitution. So the first thing you need to note whenever we are talking about constitution is what article are we talking about. Okay, when we are talking about constitution, we will always have articles. When we are talking about some law, we will have sections. Okay, so section XYZ of IPC, right? Section XYZ of some other law. But when we are saying articles, articles is of the constitution. So you need to remember this article 246. Even if you are not exactly recalling this article, at least you have an idea about in what range are we talking about. Okay, so 240-ish is the range that we are talking about, not in the earlier part of the constitution. At least this much you should know. And as you revise this figure, this data multiple times, this information, it will stick in your mind that we are talking about article 246, right? So this article talks about 3 lists. You know the names of these 3 lists. Then come directly to the next point. The second sub point is talking about, however, the constitution provides federal supremacy on concurrent list in case of a conflict. This is given in your Lakshmikant also. Here also it is just reiterated that if there is a conflict in the items in concurrent list, the parliament has supremacy. This is important, can be asked, right? Then comes article 248. Okay, what does this tell? It is about residuary powers being given to the parliament. Really important. Then in the next point, main point, whenever I'm referencing these points, I'll use the terms main points and sub points. Okay, the main points will be the full black dot, and when I say sub point, it is the white circle. Okay, the sub point. Sarkaria Commission. Okay, what it said about concurrent list, or what is the relation between Sarkaria Commission and concurrent list, you need to know. Multiple times these kind of questions have been asked. Rajmanar Commission or committee or some, what it said, or which of the following commissions proposed to ban the Indian Administrative Service, or something like that. The main proposals of commissions committees have been asked, so you need to know. So what did Sarkaria Commission say about concurrent list is important, can be asked. Okay, then on the right hand side you have the 7 schedule, which contains the 3 lists. Okay, so 7 schedule, you need to remember the name of the schedule, that you can mess up. Okay, is it 7 schedule, is it 9 schedule, what else, right? So 7 schedule, lucky 7. Okay, lucky 7 contains 3 lists. List 1, what is the list, what is the purpose? You should know how many entries it has. If possible, you go through the lists. Okay, union, state and concurrent list. Just note what all kind of entries are there in these lists. Different kind of questions also can be framed here. You could be given a list of items, especially confusing items, which you feel that, for example, education. Okay, it could be asked that education is in which list. It might be difficult for you unless you know exactly whether it is state list or concurrent list or union list, right? So when some list item is asked and in which list that item is placed, when this is asked, it will require clear-cut knowledge. UPSC will try to trick you about common sense. Okay, you will feel that some item belongs to state list, for example, but actually it is in the concurrent list. Okay, so this is where going through the list helps. Of course, you don't need to mug up all of these entries. Okay, but the confusing entries, whatever you feel, you is counterintuitive, those entries you should know in which exact list they occur. Then what can be asked is the sequence of items in the list. Which item has got the maximum number of entries, which has got the least number of entries. The changes in the list also can be asked. What were the number of items when the constitution was enacted, and which list has been amended maximum number of times. These kind of basic questions, all this information is given in your Lakshmikant, so you have to revise from there. Okay, so here we have the number of items given: 100 in union, 61 in state and 52, and also see the corresponding figures. 97 items were there in the union list originally, so only 3 items have been added so far. Okay, and actually there has been an increase from 97 to 100, but when it comes to state list, there were 66 items originally, but now there are only 61 items, and there has been an increase in the number of items from 47 to 52 in the concurrent list, right? So the 5 items that were there in the state list, they are now the 5 items, they have been added in the concurrent list. So what were those 5 items? Just have a look. Okay, the next page, come to the right hand side, that green box, the top box. Okay, it talks about amending the 7th schedule. Really important. Whenever anything talks about amendment of the constitution, what is the procedure? You have to study this main point and both the sub points. You should know the exact procedure of amendment. Question can be asked. Other provisions that can be amended in a similar manner, this point also is really important. Below this amendment box is another green box which talks about related information. Now this is not as important as the previous green box, but it would be good if you just know that there is something called as doctrine of pith and substance. Okay, and what is the meaning of doctrine of pith and substance? What is its significance? That's it. Iske bahar kuch nahi aayega. They will not go into which case and where exactly these have been used. Too technical these things are, but ideally you are at least supposed to know that there is something known as this doctrine of pith and substance and doctrine of colorable legislation, and what they stand for. Why are they important, basically? Okay, one important point in the doctrine of colorable legislation. Okay, the second doctrine mentioned in this related information green box, doctrine of colorable legislation. Come to the last sub point. The last sub point, the third sub point, it says it is a tool devised and applied by the Supreme Court. Okay, so this has been made, this has been created by the Supreme Court. This is important information that may be asked, right? And One example, recent example is of this Balaji versus State of Mysore. You don't need to remember this case. It will not be asked in exam, but this is just an example of how this doctrine has been applied. If at all a question comes on these doctrines, because these are very technical, they are going to most likely ask you about their meaning and significance. And if you go through this case, you will understand, okay, this is how this doctrine has been applied. So you'll be able to pick amongst the options. It will certainly not going to ask you about what case and what doctrine. That kind of thing will not be asked. Okay. Then you have the need to revisit 7th schedule. Just to the left of this doctrine wala green box, you have the need to revisit 7th schedule. Okay, here just one second guys, come to the previous page before we come to the need to revisit. On the previous page, just to the left of the 7th schedule, the list 3 list image, we have rationale of keeping 7th schedule in the constitution. Did you find it? Rationale of keeping 7th schedule in the constitution. Is everybody with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. See, this is one reason. If you open your cameras, I'll be able to see you nodding. I'll be able to see you, what is happening. Otherwise, I'll just be moving in the dark. Okay, so you need to know why is 7th schedule in the constitution. Thinking based question, a logic based question can be asked from here. Okay, you could get a list of some entries and the question could ask which of these are the reasons for the existence of 7th schedule in the Constitution of India, or some version of this. Okay, so just go through the rationale, you will get a basic idea. The question, whatever I'm telling you, it may give you something that is completely new. Okay, but if you understand these points, and maybe you go through your textbooks also, NCRTs and your Lakshmikant, once you understand the basics of why it is there, you will be easily able to answer the question. But you have to be very careful about the exact words that are being used, the extremity of those words. Okay, that will decide the answer of that question. Then you have the next part that I was telling about, need to revisit the 7th schedule. This is not really important. Just come to the sub point, which is the first point is archaic, the second point is service delivery, the third point is centralization. Okay, so this is a trend that is happening. You need to know what things are happening in the polity, in your polity. So there's a noticeable trend towards centralization, and this subpoint carries the example. Okay, so it says, for example, shifting the subjects like forest and education from state list to the concurrent list by the 42nd amendment. This is really important, right? I told you, like those 5 items which were there in the state list and have been transferred to the concurrent list. So what were those 5 items? And just see which constitutional amendment transferred those. If it is a really important constitutional amendment like the 42nd amendment, then you should know. Okay, if it is just some constitutional amendment which is not really important, nothing around those amendments have been asked, those you can ignore. The constitution amendment you can ignore, but the items you need to know, which 5 items are those which have been transferred. And if it is an important amendment which you are otherwise also supposed to know, then you need to know this particular amendment also here. Okay, next is dominant position of center that we have already seen. Next is way forward. In way forward, the third point talks about Sarkaria committee recommendations, right? So 1998 also the report year is given. So you need to know roughly, these are all important commissions. Okay, Sarkaria committee is there, Panchi commission is there, Madhav Gadgil and Tendulkar, etc. All of these important commissions, committees which are in news, you need to know their years. When you know the years, it is critical in answering the question, because that year you can then just recall what was happening in the political scene, what was happening on the environmental scene, right? So they help you in arriving at the answer, even if you directly don't know the answer to the question. So Sarkaria Committee, what it recommended, just go through the points, and the year of Sarkaria Committee, and then of course Panchi Commission, the year and what it said, right? So that is the first topic.